7.7 billion. That is the projected total population of the planet right now. To put that into perspective, that is equivalent to 100,000 full NFL stadiums. Holding hands, we could round the globe 345 times if we all joined our hands. We find it challenging to comprehend billions, particularly when it comes to humans. Consider this. How many persons do you usually interact with? You split the rent with your housemates or your partner, your pals group, your parents, and your siblings. Your coworkers who you talk to on Zoom or in person, as well as the barista at the coffee shop you visit each morning. There aren't many of them, are there? Our lives sometimes seem to take place fully within of our own particular bubble. Within its boundaries, we go about our daily business, moving exclusively within the perimeter and contacting only a chosen few whose bubbles overlap with ours. But in reality, we are all a part of the much larger, infinitely interconnected web known as the human race. Over 7.7 billion people are presently residing on Earth. And it's getting bigger. There are about 385,000 births per day. On the other hand, just about 166,000 people pass away each day. Consequently, our population is increasing by about 219,000 people daily on average. That is extremely large. Before our population of 1 billion reached its peak in the year 1804, humans had existed on Earth for hundreds of thousands of years. However, it only took 200 more years for the population to increase by 7 times that amount. By 2030, there will be about 8.5 billion people on the Earth, followed by 9.7 billion in 2050 and just under 11 billion in 2100 if we continue to expand at this rate. Even when you repeat these figures out, it's still hard to imagine there being 11 billion people on the planet. Couple this with the fact that, as an individual, you are unlikely to experience population growth's immediate repercussions as you go about your daily activities, and it becomes clear why this issue is not as widely recognized as it should be. The unfortunate truth of our rapid population expansion is that as more people inhabit the globe, we will require more resources, fresh water, clean air, food, and housing. How many people can our planet actually sustain? Even though our resources are limited, can that number keep increasing indefinitely? How many will humans become before the planet can no longer support us? The solutions aren't that clear-cut. But anytime scientists think about this enormous existential problem, they deconstruct it using a notion known as carrying capacity. The carrying capacity concept seeks to estimate the most people the planet can accommodate before the population reaches its peak and is compelled to, well, course correct. So what will it look like when we've reached the maximum amount of people the Earth can sustain? Although it's not a pleasant picture, you've undoubtedly heard something similar before. Nearly all scientists believe we will run into issues as our population continues to expand. Fresh water and arable land will always be in short supply, and climate change will only make the situation worse. And due to sickness and malnutrition, the average human lifetime, which increased from roughly 65 years in the early 1990s to just under 73 years heading into the 2020s, may start to drop once more. In essence, this indicates that the quality of living for a large portion of the population on Earth is expected to worsen if the rate of global population growth continues to increase without any restrictions. Anyone who is fully aware of the enormous challenges facing humanity in the future may find that a basic life decision, such as whether to have children, becomes a huge moral conundrum. You may wonder if it is moral to raise children in a world where global warming and population growth may dramatically lower their quality of life compared to yours. But as you wrestle with this moral dilemma, you must also take into account the quality of life for your unborn child. Furthermore, simply by having children, you run the risk of unintentionally burdening a world that is already overburdened. According to a 2017 study published in Environmental Research Letters, there are 4 main lifestyle decisions a person in a high-income nation may undertake to lessen their carbon footprint. These options included change to a plant-based diet, stop driving, find alternative transportation, steer clear of flying, and have one fewer child. From this, you can see how much energy we might be able to save by getting rid of one person. But I must draw your attention to a crucial part of that study. It was created with people in high-income nations in mind. Carrying capacity and carbon footprints, as you can see, are not exact sciences that apply to everyone on the world equally. The quantity of carbon emissions that you contribute directly depends on where and how you live. By calculating the number of acres of arable land required to maintain our population, we may determine carrying capacity. According to the World Watch Institute, if everyone adopted a vegetarian diet and our land and resources were allocated equally, the Earth would have slightly under 2 hectares, 5 acres, of land per person. Theoretically, this would be enough to support one person's needs for food, clothing, wood for shelter, and waste absorption. However, the typical American now only uses about 10 hectares, 25 acres, of land. If we all wish to live equitably and sustainably, that is far beyond their means. When you start crunching the numbers, it becomes impossible to deny the fact that people from different regions of the world use different amounts of the planet's resources. Let's take energy usage as an illustration. The average American uses twice as much energy as they do nationwide, on average, in Texas. That is 4 times more energy than the typical UK resident and 8 times more energy than the typical Chinese citizen. One high-definition TV in an American home uses half as much electricity annually as the average Nigerian uses for all of their requirements. For greenhouse gases, the same holds true. Around 2 tons of CO2 are emitted annually by the typical Indian person. The average annual CO2 emissions per person in the UK are 7 tons, while this number soars to a staggering 200 tons in the US. These startling disparities indicate that deciding whether or not to start a family can differ greatly depending on whether you live in Texas versus Mumbai, India. But I don't want to distill large, diverse countries into one-dimensional figures that don't fully convey the context. Rarely are things as simple as they are presented to be. Even though there are obvious links between the wealth gaps between high and low-income countries and the proportion of carbon emissions a population is responsible for, that idea partially ignores the fact that an individual's carbon footprint is primarily influenced by their level of personal wealth. The amount of greenhouse gases emitted by an Indian businessman who uses their private aircraft to travel will be far more than that of an American who lives in poverty. 50% of world emissions are attributable to the richest 10% of the population. Not all of the world's worst pollutants are found in a single nation. They exist everywhere in the world. It turns out that personal riches has an unimaginably higher influence than regional or national wealth. To illustrate, the carbon emissions from each passenger on Jeff Bezos's 11-minute space flight equaled the lifetime emissions of the billion poorest people on the planet. Think about that. What then can we do to address this? Should the richest people on Earth, who produce the vast bulk of carbon emissions, simply stop having kids? Even so, is that possible? Is humanity's future in jeopardy if we are unable to bring it about? Let's examine China's one-child restriction. The Chinese government attempted to control its population between 1980 and 2015 by only allowing each household to have one child. And despite the great and incomprehensible pain it brought about, their goal of reducing the population was successful. After 1980, China's overall rate of natural increase sharply decreased. The Chinese government calculated that they averted an estimated 400 million births after the fact. The government is actively promoting people to have numerous children as China's population is currently aging. There is currently an age disparity in the nation that needs to be addressed. The state's ability to support the elderly and adult children who must take care of their aging parents would be severely strained by the possibility that a third of China's population will be older than 60 by 2050. Could a policy similar to China's one-child rule be implemented elsewhere in the world, though, if we need to slow down the rise of the world's population? Well, even without any official procedures in place, it's sort of starting to happen spontaneously. About 5 children were born per woman worldwide in the 1960s. As of right now, that has naturally balanced out to roughly 2.5 kids. And it's anticipated that this number will keep dropping. You see, parents must reproduce at a rate known as the replacement level in order for the size of a population to remain constant. This translates to around 2 kids per couple. Therefore, removing 1 billion of the world's lowest energy consumers would have less of an impact than simply preventing Jeff Bezos from taking a ride into space. This is all for today. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon for more videos. Stay tuned with AWZ.